JSR was built in a time where there are multiple server-side runtimes, where there is browsers to think about, and lots of different tooling that is using JavaScript. And I think we kind of need a common town square that is runtime agnostic.
Hello, welcome to the DevTools-fm podcast. This is a podcast about developer tools and the people who make them. I'm Andrew, and this is my co-host, Justin.
Hey, everyone. We are really excited today to have Ryan Dahl joining us. Ryan is the creator of Node.js and now Deno. Ryan, I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. We've had a lot of really good guests come on the podcast, and we've been really honored to talk to people who's affected our careers. But it's no small thing to talk about the influence that Node in particular has had, especially on Andrew and my own career and so many other people in this space. So it's really an honor to have you on. Before we start talking about the work that you've done, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
I am living in New York City. I have a daughter who's 2 years old, and I've been working on this Deno project / company, which is kind of V2 of Node as I see it, for the last couple of years, and having a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome. So maybe we can just start at the top. Let's just talk about Node a little bit. So where did Node start? And when you were first working on it, did you ever think it was going to get as big as it is today?
I mean, no, not at all. I mean, I think I've been continually shocked at how it keeps growing and growing and growing. I mean, in year one, I thought it was amazingly popular, and in year two, it seemed even more amazingly popular. But I think it wasn't until 2015 or so that it really became kind of mainstream in developer circles. And by then, I had stopped working on the project. But in 2012, it was very clear that this thing was going to be a big deal. Gosh, I am just happy to have been in the right place at the right time and kind of gotten lucky to have worked on something so impactful.
So the life of Node has been long and has been plagued with a little bit of drama, but I think we're mostly past that drama in the current times. But what do you think of the current direction of Node?
I mean, it's being used by millions of people. I think Node, like a lot of software that reaches that level of adoption, is going to be around forever. The Apache web server will be around forever. The Linux kernel will be around forever. I think it's inevitable that Node will be there for a very long time. But inherent in my Deno project is, a observation that things could be better in the JavaScript world, and I think that Node is tied down by its large adoption and in many ways can't innovate as urgently as I think is necessary in a language like JavaScript, where JavaScript is much larger than Node. It is kind of the lingua franca of programming languages, and I think being tied to the web browser and the web browser being tied so deeply to humanity has a long future ahead of it, and I think there's still work to be done to make that ecosystem robust and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe for our listeners who are kind of new to the space, could you talk a little bit about? We'll just focus on Deno now. Can you talk a little bit about what Deno is and why somebody may use it, and then after that, maybe contrast it a little bit to Node?
Deno is both Deno and Node are built on top of V8, which is the JavaScript runtime from Chrome. I think of them kind of like Linux distributions, right? You have Debian, you have Red Hat. They're both Linux kernel distributions. Node and Deno and Cloudflare Workers, for that matter, are different distributions of V8. Deno is taking a couple of different perspectives than Node. So first of all, it's much more modern. So it is obviously can execute JavaScript, but has a heavy emphasis on TypeScript and ECMAScript modules. In fact, really discourages you from using common JS. It has a secure by default philosophy. JavaScript itself has a lot of security features, and in Node we've plugged all sorts of holes in it to access the file system and generally interact with your operating system. That's what makes Node useful, right? You can open socket connections. You can do those things in Deno too, but you have to kind of give the runtime permission to do those things, much like the web browser needs permission to access your webcam. The APIs in Deno are more in line with browsers. So, for example, in Node, this has been corrected in recent releases of Node, but early on there was no fetch in JavaScript. There was no HTTP client, and so I invented one, and subsequently the fetch API was standardized and put into browsers. And Deno uses web streams, uses web crypto, uses web GPU. Really strives to keep the delta between browser APIs and server-side APIs as small as possible. Intrinsically, it is a different system. Deno is not a web browser. It is for interacting with file systems and TCP sockets and all sorts of stuff that you can't do in web browsers. And so there's always going to be a gap, but I think it's the future of JavaScript will always be browser JavaScript. And so I think it's really important to keep that gap as narrow as possible. And Deno, I guess, has a little bit of a different philosophy when it comes to what the runtime provides. Node tries to be as small as possible, has a small core, or at least that in my day was the philosophy. I think things have changed in recent years, but that has created kind of a complex ecosystem of tooling that people need to choose. So you need to decide what linter you're going to run and what code formatter you're going to use and what build tool, what bundler you're going to use. And the list just goes on and on. People get very familiar with this if you're working in Node for a long time, and that you use Prettier and you use ESLint and you kind of know what the right choices are. But if you walk away from Node for a couple of years, or if you're new to the system and come back, it's just this bewildering array of random words that you have to learn in order to just set up your project. And Deno takes the philosophy that this is actually this is what the runtime provides. It provides a full tool chain for developing JavaScript and TypeScript. And so it has a linter built in, it has a code formatter built in. Like it is opinionated in how you develop stuff. It has a language server, an LSP built in, so that you get code completion in VS Code. And it does all of this is kind of meant to work together in a really tight way, so that you as a programmer sitting down to use Deno should just magically all work. Like there's very little that you have to know ahead of time when you kind of sit down and use Deno. And I think that overall gives the vibe of simplicity.
We'd like to thank this week's episode sponsor, Clerk. Clerk provides full stack integrations for setting up authentication in your app, and it's such a breeze to set up. Typically, all you need to do to use Clerk is just set up some components in your app and hook it up in your backend, and you're off to the races. If you don't want to use their components, they provide a bunch of options to hook up to their APIs yourself. And it doesn't just stop at sign-in. They have a whole other bunch of things that help you to manage users, stuff like user profiles and organizations. I say the less you have to build around user authentication and management, the better. But they actually have a new feature in beta right now called Clerk Elements. If you've ever heard of things like Radix UI or any other headless UI libraries, it's just like that. This opens up the door for customization, where you can use Clerk's low-level primitive components to build your authentication and then style it however you want. You can just slap some Tailwind classes on there. An awesome thing about Clerk is it's not just for the big companies. They have a super generous free tier that allows up to 10,000 monthly active users. Clerk truly gives you everything you need to authenticate and manage your users, freeing you to focus on building the app that you want to build instead of worrying about authentication. If you want to learn more about Clerk, head over to clerk.com to check them out. Do you want to support the podcast and never hear these ads again? Become a member on one of the various channels that we offer it. With that, you'll get ad-free content and you'll get the episodes a little bit earlier than everybody else. If you want to find another way to support the podcast, head over to shop.devtools-fm. You can buy a shirt or a hat to show your support for the podcast. And with that, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, it had been a while since I went back to the Deno website, and I was just surprised by the utter, so many services and built-in things that you offer. I hadn't seen the linter, I hadn't seen the formatter. You have a test runner now, and you have all these back-end services. So it's it really is completing that vision of a one-stop shop.
I think it's very timely too, because I go back to your early decision of making Node small core, and I think that was the right decision at the time, because the linters and all the tools and stuff just didn't exist. You're building Node, and if you would have baked all that stuff into Node at that time, well, A, Node would have been a lot slower to evolve, and B, frankly, you would have made probably a lot of wrong decisions, because one of the things that a lot of people have complained about in the last several years, I don't hear it as much these days, but especially, 2015, that time range is JavaScript churn. It's oh, everything's happening. All these libraries are getting built and then deprecated. But I think the thing to acknowledge there is the sort of rapid learning that the whole industry was going through in this space. JavaScript, the language and the tooling and everything evolved so quickly. And so many lessons were able to be learned. And I think the small core part of Node really enabled that sort of just community learning. And where we're at now is things are actually much more stable. We have a relatively better understanding of what kinds of tools to expect and everything. And I am just so excited that you've had the opportunity to sort of revamp this idea, because now, after all the learning we've done, you're packaging this up in a nice little product. And it's pretty fantastic. I think it's very well timed, for sure.
Good, thanks. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah, when in the first year of Node, there wasn't even a way to distribute packages, right? This was largely invented by Isaac Schluter, and we built this NPM system, which it's kind of hard to think back to 15 years ago, but there was a time when none of this was worked out at all. And now we kind of have the chance to go back and I guess, maybe an analogy or a way that I like to program is fast and sloppy first pass, and then rewrite. And often the first sloppy pass will be a bash script or a JavaScript sort of thing. And as you kind of understand the problem that you're solving, it gets set into stone. And maybe you're porting stuff into Rust, you're kind of defining the structures. And yeah, I think at this point in 2024, we have a pretty good idea of the JavaScript. We have a much more intelligent, detailed idea of what the JavaScript ecosystem needs and the various components of it. And yeah, hopefully Deno can deliver on it. I think there is also a danger of going too far, and you can kind of overstep. When you decide to have a big core, you can definitely kind of overstep your bounds and step into areas where things are still in flux. We have a project at Deno called Fresh, which is a web framework. It's not part of Deno itself, so it's I think ripe for this area. But I wouldn't want to make the claim that Fresh is the way that you develop websites. I think there is still rapid iteration happening in the web framework space. I expect that to continue for many years to come. Fresh is one attempt at this, one way of doing that. But I would not want to, for example, try to define for everybody how web frameworks work. That's very unclear still.
Yeah, absolutely. So Deno itself went through a lot of changes in its life cycle. So I remember, your sort of the first talk that you gave, sort of introducing Deno, or really talking about the the things that you regretted about Node, and then the things that you would like think about differently in Deno, and some of those even original things have changed a little bit. So can you talk about like the evolution of Deno as a project?
Yeah, Deno started as really just a demo for a conference. This 10 things I regret about Node talk, and it's extremely primitive. It was written in Go. It did have TypeScript built in. I think that one of the main ideas in it was the security feature was there from the beginning. But there was also some kind of questionable ideas about how the native part talked to the JavaScript part. That was kind of a big part. I'm not sure if I talked about it in that talk, but what I was thinking about a lot, and what I've thought about for a long time, is just kind of how the native part interacts with JavaScript, and kind of how you do that boundary crossing, because that ends up being kind of a lot of what these runtimes are dealing with. Since then, a lot has changed. It's written in Rust. That happened, a month after that talk or so. We switched away from Go. So it's one of the largest Rust projects actually now. It still has security, still has TypeScript. Those are key parts of it. But the relationship to the existing NPM and Node ecosystem has changed quite a bit. I think originally I was just like, let's just blaze a new trail here and see how this works. That is interesting for a demo, but once you start talking to real users who are playing around with it, you realize that like, oh, they have this NPM module that does whatever, it's the AWS SDK, and it's inconceivable that everybody is going to rewrite like every pattern. There's so much infrastructure in the NPM and Node world that it becomes really infeasible to kind of start a completely independent ecosystem. So over the last, let's say, 2 years or so, we've been putting a lot of work into compatibility with NPM, and these days, Deno has most, it's kind of hard to quantify actually, but most of the built-in Node APIs implemented. So that like node:/fs, like you can just import that and use that. And that's deeply baked into Deno. You can also just import NPM packages. And because most NPM packages are written in CommonJS with require, although you can't use require as a top level Deno user, we kind of prevent you from doing that. You can actually, Deno does have an implementation of CommonJS because it needs to support all of these NPM modules. This has been a really long journey because the long tail of compatibility is hard. But we continue to hammer away at it, and Deno is getting better and better at it every day. Sometimes it seems like it's going to go on forever, but I mean, these days Deno can run Next.js, it can run most web frameworks, and we're working towards a Deno 2 release where we make this really explicit and are just like, you can essentially use Deno in all of your existing Node projects. It doesn't matter if they have an API, native extensions. It doesn't matter if they have CommonJS NPM dependencies. It doesn't matter if it's a packaged JSON project that has nothing to do with Deno. It doesn't matter if it's using private registries or if it's using NPM workspaces. It all just works in Deno. We're pretty close to that. That's just a couple of months away.
Sweet. So you've been doing some new things in the package registry space. You guys came out with a thing called JSR. So what is JSR? How is it different than NPM? And like, what sort of restrictions does it put in place to make JSR different than NPM?
Yeah, JSR stands for JavaScript Registry, and it is a new registry, kind of like NPM. And it's important to differentiate this from Yarn or PNPM, which are package managers that still talk to the same NPM registry. JSR is really a new storage location, a new distribution marketplace for JavaScript and TypeScript code. JSR is NPM just has had many years of no development, right? Since the GitHub acquisition, it's really not moving very much. NPM is, of course, very old at this point and is built around this common JS module system rather than the more modern and standard ECMAScript modules. The majority of packages on NPM are common JS. And these days, JavaScript has a module system. It's called ESM, and actually most modern JavaScript code is written in TypeScript. I consider TypeScript kind of V2 of JavaScript, and there's proposals in flight to even make that more standardized with types as comments. So I expect in the coming years that browsers will probably be able to interpret TypeScript directly. We think it's important that you are able to distribute the code that you write. And when somebody is pulling in a library from you and they click, go to definition on some method that you've provided, that you get directly into the source code that was written for that method. That is essentially impossible in NPM, or is very convoluted. Let's call it, because NPM is kind of built for common JS first development. So it requires a bit of research and somersaulting to figure out how you take your TypeScript code and actually just package it up and distribute it in NPM. It's quite a headache for quite a lot of people, and JSR is essentially sidestepping all of this. The philosophy is that you publish your TypeScript directly, and we will take care of the rest. JSR is not blind to the network effects of NPM. So your JSR packages are allowed to depend on NPM packages, and JSR also acts as an NPM registry itself. There's npm.jsr.io, which is literally an NPM registry. So you can pull JSR packages into, say, your web framework, or you can set JSR as an upstream of your private registry. So it is really meant to be backwards compatible with NPM, but it's giving a new modern place for people to distribute code, and JSR is really trying to level up the ecosystem, encouraging best practices. So it has a number of features to that effect. For example, it has a pub score mechanism, which we stole from Dart's pub.dev, that essentially gives you a higher score if you do best practices. Obviously, we don't want to be super strict. We want to encourage people to publish whatever. It's annoying when systems are, when warnings are actually errors. Sometimes you just want to publish, but we want to push you in the right direction, right? So you get a higher score if you provide documentation for all of your exported symbols. You get a higher score if you have certain security mechanisms, which I should probably talk about. The kind of SIG store. we have a attestation providence security system where we can actually kind of cryptographically check that packages were published by certain authors via GitHub Actions. So you get a higher score if you have that enabled. So yeah, generally we have kind of an opinionated stance, which is, publish in TypeScript, publish in JavaScript if you want, of course, but don't worry about kind of the build step of this. You should be publishing the code that you write, and you should not worry about anything else. Let JSR take care of the distributing on NPM problem. So JSR will essentially compile this down to JavaScript for you, strip out your types. It will create your DTS files. It will it will distribute an optimal NPM package for you that you can kind of distribute to your users. We don't expect everybody to switch to JSR all at once. Furthermore, JSR is really intended to not be node first. NPM is of course the node package manager. JSR, is built in a time where there are multiple server-side runtimes, where there is browsers to think about, and just lots of different tooling that is using JavaScript, and I think we kind of need a common town square that is runtime agnostic. JSR is not a product of Deno, although we built it. It is open source and intends to be openly managed. Surprisingly, like the NPM registry isn't even open source. So we are really intending this as a public service, and essentially want to put it into the public domain once we kind of find a staff of some people that are sufficiently motivated to kind of moderate and keep it nice. We hope that this can really serve to as I said, level up what the JavaScript ecosystem is doing.
You're shipping TypeScript, but like JSR itself is like doing a transpilation using TSC. Is there any do I have to worry about TS configs? Oh, interesting. Not using TSC. So when I'm using TS configs, normally I have like libraries and targets and all of that. How does like JSR help me with that and make me not worry about it?
You don't need to have any sort of TS config. There is essentially like a recommended way. Our philosophy is like, don't choose your own compiler options. Like we want TypeScript that is shareable amongst multiple libraries, and we prefer that everybody has the same TypeScript config. It's kind of a anti-pattern actually, that everybody is kind of choosing their own flavor of TypeScript. There should be one language, and JSR encourages you to do that. Like you do not configure TypeScript at all.
That's awesome. Yeah, it does take away hopefully a lot of headache, because configuration can take forever. I actually have two questions about JSR. So one of the things that I really like about what JSR does is it shows compatibility for different platforms, for different runtimes. So it's like, oh, well, this can run on these browsers, or this can run, obviously on Deno or Cloudflare workers or something. What is the bar for listing? When do you decide to list another JavaScript runtime? And what is that process like? That is one question.
That is completely up to the maintainer of the package. So it's just a Boolean setting in the package configuration on the website. You just say this, this supports Cloudflare. We don't test that. We don't police that in any way. It's just a notice to people. It's just, hey, FYI. You can search by the runtime that you're interested in. So if you're, looking for Cloudflare worker compatible modules, you can search by that. But we can't verify that or check that in any way. But nevertheless, I think it's kind of a nice little piece of information to have as kind of top order metadata for packages.
For sure. And then the sort of last question on the topic. So before JSR, there was Deno.land/x. So that was sort of a kind of a light registry, if you will, for publishing some scripts. So what is the sort of fate of X? Is that going to be rolled into JSR? Will it be deprecated? Like, what's the relationship there?
Yeah, so Deno has, famously kind of started with this very interesting module system that where everything is a URL. That there is no package manager. Because this is what is specified in ESM modules in the standard, so you can actually pull in URLs in browser ESM code. This has frankly not worked out particularly greatly. I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to link to random codes. It's really nice for kind of one-off scripts. But for like larger projects, you kind of want defined packages. First of all, you really want the server that you're fetching the data from, the source code from, to remain online. And what we found is that, like, essentially, other than a few kind of defined places, for example, GitHub or Deno.land or esm.sh, the reliability of various URLs was pretty bad. And so you start having this ecosystem of modules that link to random websites. Crux.land was something that somebody set up. And then these things go down. And because those are in the module graph, that affects dependencies. And it just overall creates not a great picture. And I'm sure there's all sorts of people rolling their eyes saying, like, well, I could have told you that from the get-go. Obviously that was apparent from the outset, but it's kind of nice to push on ideas and see how far that can take you. Another problem with the HTTP URLs, HTTP specifiers as a module system, is that it has no versioning. So obviously you can put the version in the URL itself, but Deno would not have any idea of what that version is. And so being able to do module deduplication across a tree of modules, where maybe you depend on some package that has, let's say you depend on the standard library HTTP package version 0.1.2. But elsewhere in your dependency graph, you're depending on the standard library HTTP module version 0.1.3. They're almost the exact same thing. They're just a patch release different from each other, but that code will get in, because we're only looking at URL specifiers, HTTP URL specifiers. Deno just treats them abstractly as two different modules rather than the same module, slightly different, that could probably be deduplicated. So you end up having more code in your dependency tree than necessary. So Deno, of course, will continue to support HTTP modules, and Deno/X will continue to be there indefinitely. But JSR is really kind of the next iteration of Deno/X. All of our, over years, like, we've kind of dwelled on this and thought about it, and like, well, maybe we should just encourage people to publish to NPM. Maybe we should, make a new version of Deno/X. And ultimately, after thinking, just dwelling on this forever, just decided that we really needed to create JSR, that JavaScript demanded it. And I really encourage people to try it out. I think you will be delightfully surprised at like how nice JSR is. It is absolutely delightful to use, and there's a lot of thought in every little detail of that system.
Yeah, it's cool that you guys are adding new features, like the documentation stuff is really cool. But even besides that, just having a registry that's ESM only is huge, because like we're 10 years into the transition to ESM and there is literally no end in sight. Like I still hesitate to refactor some projects to ESM just because like the tooling and the complexity behind it is still such a high wall.
It really necessitates a hard, we're trying to make the switch not a hard switch, but it really requires kind of a new place. I think a place like a registry should be open source. I think it should be community managed. I think GitHub and Microsoft are great stewards of the NPM registry, but it's just weird that it's not open. So like there are millions of people developing with JavaScript, and like we just kind of need robust foundations for this, and we need to look to the future. I think JavaScript will be here with us 5, 10, 20 years from now, and so JSR, it's obviously in its infancy, but hopefully will kind of provide a safe place for people to kind of build the kind of next ecosystem of JavaScript.
So there's a bit of a proliferation of JavaScript runtimes now. So you've talked about, obviously Deno and Node, and there's Bun. We've talked to Jared Sumner before. There's Cloudflare Workers, their Workerd project, and it seems to be like more and more of these. Recently, there's been an effort called WinterCG to sort of, what I understand, to try to unify some of the runtimes. Do you know much about that effort, and has Deno evolved at all in the sort of project there?
Oh yeah, I mean we are a founding member along with Cloudflare. So uh, uh, Luca, one of the Deno people, is pretty deeply involved in WinterCG. So yes, we're involved there. When I think it's a good goal and a good forum for different runtimes to talk about stuff. It's maybe people imagine that it's more than it is right now. I mean, it's pretty technical. It's not necessarily complete in terms of defining exactly what a common server side JavaScript code is necessarily going to look like. It's basically saying, hey, these things these web APIs are going to work this way, and maybe there's some argument here that works slightly differently in server side than it does in the browser. But it's at least at the current time, it's pretty minimal actually. What WinterCG has proposed.
So is there any like standard that has been decided upon? Like, is request response model in there or anything like that?
Oh yeah. It totally is. It's just it's things that you would expect, right? So it ends like a lot of standards work, which I applaud the people who participate in these things, but I myself find incredibly boring. It's it's good to do these sort of things, but it is really just kind of shading in the Venn diagram of browser and server side stuff, and just kind of clarifying in a lot of technical areas what the request object is doing and how that streams and that sort of stuff. I think the big thing would be to define a web server API, and I think there's a couple of attempts at kind of what how do you specify, how do you program a web server in JavaScript, right? Do you import node : HTTP? Do you export default object that has a fetch method? Do you call deno.serve and give a callback, right? There's all these different APIs, and I think Cloudflare's been really great with. I actually really appreciate the export default. I'm not sure if you guys know what I'm talking about, but the export default object fetch model that Cloudflare has, I think is pretty runtime agnostic, and something that we're actually adding support for to Deno in the latest release. We participate. We are a founding member. But and I think maybe over the coming years, where this community group will turn into an actual specification and kind of tread further along in this direction.
One of the things that I'm really excited about Deno, well, I mean, there's so much that I'm excited about, but we've already talked about sort of the transition from a small core to an inclusive tool, a runtime that provides all the tools you need to be very productive. I think that's extremely powerful, and there's always the sort of next step to this is like, okay, now I want to build applications in this. Where do I deploy it, and how do I handle that? And I think you have a service called Deno Deploy, which is a simple way to deploy Deno functions to the cloud. I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about that service and what the kind of motivation behind building it was.
Yeah, there's a through line through all of my work, from Node to Deno Deploy to JSR, which is I like scripting languages. I myself obviously use scripting languages, but I'm more of a C++ programmer, more of a Rust programmer actually. So there is what's nice about scripting languages is that it allows you to eliminate as much of the boilerplate as possible, right? You can, almost in English program stuff, and that's just not the case in lower level languages. So I appreciate, and JavaScript, maybe is not the best scripting language on earth, but it's the most popular one, and therefore kind of the place to put effort into. And so I really see scripting languages as a way to remove boilerplate. And so all of this work is about just trying to get to the core of the idea so that people can just program what it is they're thinking and just remove everything else. Because you're in a scripting language, right? Like like if you're in C++, then that's probably not the goal. The goal is to make it as fast as possible, right? But if you're in a scripting language, that you want to you want to be as terse as possible. And so that is what Node 15 years ago was trying to do. That's what Deno is trying to do. That's what JSR is trying to do, where you just publish the TypeScript that you write. And that's what Deno deploy is trying to do too. But in kind of the cloud hosting sense. So you really just focus on your business logic, your 3 lines of JavaScript, and then you give it to us and we take care of everything else, right? You put that into a playground, or you put that into a GitHub repo and attach the Deno deploy GitHub app. And then, on every commit, it can create a new subdomain for you and kind of run your code in a serverless fashion. I don't think I'm alone when I say that serverless is the future of cloud computing. And I think there's going to be, I think we're far from the end state of what serverless ultimately looks like. And I think there's going to be different serverless platforms for different use cases, right? There's going to be WASM ones, there's going to be Lambda, of course, there's going to be all sorts of things. But I think there will be a place for the most boilerplate free serverless system too, and that is what Deno deploy is trying to give you. Optimal, close to optimal, fast enough, but most importantly, as simple as humanly possible.
Yeah, so it seems like Deno deploy also comes with like a lot of other services like KV, queues, cron. Are there any other stuff that you guys plan to add?
So yeah, we're basically a lot of this stuff I consider experimental ideas about how we can make programming very easy. And obviously you can make the compute side of serverless really simple, but obviously a big part of building any website or web service is managing state, setting up a database, thinking about that, how that state is replicated across the world, how consistent that state is. That ends up being like quite a lot of the activity. And KB is a very simple but very has kind of the nice features that you want for pretty complex state. I think for many use cases you will still need a relational database, but there are quite a few use cases that you can get away with kind of a simple key value store, consistent, replicated, super low latency, atomic transactions. It has super nice features, all built on top of Foundation DB, but exposed in Deno through a JavaScript API. Can like literally store JavaScript objects. It, behind the scenes, does a V8 serialization, so you can natively store JavaScript date objects. And like everything else, the feeling that you get when you use this is just, holy crap, this is this is really simple to use. Like literally nothing has to be set up. It just works. And suddenly you can have state. Similarly for cron jobs, like you just call deno.cron and give a callback, and this thing is set up and will get triggered on a certain interval. There's another feature called queues that is kind of the SQS type feature or GCP Cloud Tasks type feature that allows you to kind of queue up background work. I call all of these things kind of cloud primitives that we're experimenting with, kind of adding on to Deno deploy. Essentially, exploring how simple can we make this, and can any of these things actually serve as a robust foundation for many people to build web applications and HTTP services in general. And yeah, I consider all of these things kind of under development, and yeah, obviously these are commercial projects. So kind of have an angle of figuring out how to build the business as well.
One of the things that I really like is you have a feature called subhosting. So subhosting is not necessarily unique. Cloudflare Workers has a, I think they call it Workers for Platforms or something. So it's the ability for customers to write their own Lambda executions using a platform and run them, as a part of your product. So subhosting is a service where you can essentially have an API that just like uploads scripts and then runs them in Deno deploy. Can you talk a little bit more about subhosting? And I'm just I'm curious. One of the best things that I like about subhosting is that you just make it open to everyone, which I love. And Cloudflare Workers Workers for Platforms, this may change in the future, but at present moment, it's enterprise only. You have to have an enterprise contract to be able to sign up for it. So I'm curious to hear more about your positioning and the thoughts around it.
Yeah, subhosting is a product that came out of a partnership with Netlify. So Netlify has a product called Netlify Edge Functions. That is Deno deploy under the hood. That's using our serverless infrastructure. We essentially turned this into a product, are kind of in the process still of turning this into a product, iterating on it. And that's kind of exposing that platform to anybody. And yeah, as you mentioned, like you can sign up for free and try this out without really talking to us at all. The difference between Deno deploy and Deno subhosting is simply how many tenants you have. Deno deploy is meant for a single tenant. You are publishing your own website. Maybe you have 10 of those websites or so. Subhosting is meant for a system where you yourself have users, many users, and you're worried about running untrusted code on behalf of your users. And this is kind of comes up in two different settings. One is kind of hosting services like Netlify, where they themselves are essentially reselling hosting, or reselling this as kind of a hosting service. That's pretty obvious. Obviously, people want edge functions, and that's nice. But this also comes up in kind of, let's call them more advanced SaaS companies, where you are building a product that needs some configuration, and you probably start with kind of just a settings pane in your SaaS. But as you grow and grow, you realize like, oh, we really need a way for people to build kind of custom integrations, or kind of custom program various parts of this. And naturally, you're like, well, let's do this in JavaScript. That seems like a good solution. And maybe you're kind of like, oh, maybe you start with webhooks. You're like, oh, okay. Let's say you're Auth0 and you have some authentication service, and you want to allow people to kind of trigger a callback on some action. User logged in, right, and execute some logic based on that. So you can have kind of a webhook setup for this. That's fine, but what that means is that your customers now have to go spin up like an EC2 instance somewhere and keep that running and kind of handle those webhooks, when often it's pretty low traffic. It's essentially a lot of setup for what often is like 100 lines of JavaScript. And so the next iteration of this is the SaaS company is like, well, can't we just have a text area in our website where people can just put the JavaScript into our product itself, and we will worry about the webhook and managing of this. And yeah, I think that's a good idea. But suddenly you're like, okay, but now we are executing untrusted code on behalf of potentially many thousands of users, and we have a real security concern here. And so what originally seems like an easy idea turns out to be pretty complicated, right? Kind of at first glance, you're like, yeah, we could do that. And certainly you can, but but the question is can you do that long term, and how much is that costing you? And so yeah, sub hosting is kind of geared towards these two use cases that individual developers or kind of single tenant companies are not really going to encounter.
Yeah, it's cool to see the through line in Deno of just like simplicity and getting out of the way of the developer and making these like powerful features really easy to access.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And the whole, just the openness of the project is huge too. I mean, I mean, really just all around it. So you're talking about KV a little bit earlier, your key value store. One of the things that I love is like the KV protocol is open source. And then like somebody had like, built bridges for that. It was like, oh, you can use the like KV like interface in other places. And, just stuff like that. I see that all across the Deno ecosystem where people are taking these like, you start off and you build this thing and they're using it in these like surprising and novel ways. And it just seems to foster a really, really healthy and really just very innovative ecosystem. And it's exciting to see.
I really believe in open source. So Node was MIT licensed. Deno is MIT licensed. That is like very, very free. It's like you can take this software and fork it and build commercial stuff on it, and I will have nothing to say about that. I think that is in some ways like super crazy because like software is very expensive to develop, but it does create. It takes on a life of its own, right? Like Node just kind of created a whole industry in some ways, and it is I think attributable to kind of the very openness of the licensing. And obviously, there's many other parts to that come into it. I think it's an open question of how to build open source companies. And we are certainly taking a stab at it with Deno. My philosophy is kind of let's create as much stuff in the open as possible, and people will use that, and that's going to afford opportunities to provide them with commercial services, and we'll kind of strategically make things proprietary. This whole Foundation DB KV backend. The protocol is open. The Foundation DB backend is proprietary, or Deno deploy itself is proprietary. So not everything is open source, but we really do try to participate and code in the open, and hopefully even if our company fails and this is all not a commercial success. Obviously, I hope it is, but we will leave around a legacy of infrastructure that people can continue to build on. So I go to sleep easy at night, hoping that we're still kind of helping humanity.
Awesome. So one more question to go out on. We always ask our guests a forward-facing question, and given that you've worked on Node and you've worked on Deno, you're really, really deep in both just JavaScript in general and the runtime space. What do you feel like the future is for both JavaScript and JavaScript runtimes?
So I think narrowing the gap to browsers is pretty clear. I think a lot of my answers are going to be the things that I'm developing, right? I think I think there is JSR might seem very, very new to many people listening, but just trust me when I say that there's been a lot of thought put into this, and that it is very nice. I would really encourage people to take a look at that. I do think that this is the future of JavaScript runtimes. It might take a couple of years for it to kind of reach maturity, but I think there is kind of a new town square. I think we were talking about Deno deploy and serverless. I think serverless is a big part of the future for JavaScript runtimes. I think focus on cold start time is going to be important. I think figuring out how they interoperate with each other. We touched on WinterCG. Yeah, I think that we will continue to see a future where the cloud is dominated by JavaScript for business logic, and I think it's important to figure out how to stay true to the ideals of scripting languages, which is to get all of the crap out of the way and allow people to just program their business logic and kind of take care of everything else. And so I think that dovetails with serverless ideals quite heavily.
Awesome. Well, that wraps it up for our questions on this episode. Thanks for coming on. This was a really fun jaunt into Node, into Deno, and to see where it's all going. So thanks for coming on and talking about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks again, Ryan. I, again, can't praise Deno enough. For folks listening who haven't tried it, you should definitely check it out. You can go to deno.land, download it. It's really easy to get started with, everything out of the box. Definitely recommend you give it a go if you haven't already.